My dear friends in Christ, welcome to this reflection for the 20th Sunday. Today, the Lord confronts us with a question: how fiery is our love? How fervent is our faith? Can our faith accept contradiction and ridicule without reducing us to silence? Perhaps we are resigned to the evil in us and around us in the world and do not stand up for what is right and what is good. If you love the Lord and people enough, we do not tolerate an easy peace. There is no easy peace that puts our conscience to sleep. In this Eucharist, we pray to the Lord for the fire of His Spirit. An example of the opposition that faith brings about in a family occurs in the play Fiddler on the Roof. The plot centers around a man named Thampi, the father of a poor Jewish family. He has 5 daughters and no son. His eldest daughter marries a tailor who was not chosen for her by the traditional matchmaker. After a struggle with his conscience, Thampi accepts the marriage. His next daughter marries a college student who was broken with many Jewish traditions. After a struggle with his conscience, Thampi accepts his marriage too. Finally, his third daughter, Chava, marries a non-Jew, a young Russian soldier. When Goldie, his wife, breaks the news to him, Thampi sings a song. In it, he pours out his heart to God. At that moment, Chava, his daughter, appears and pleads with her dad to accept her and her husband. And Thampi looks up to heaven and says, "How can I accept them? Can I deny everything I believe in? On the other hand, can I deny my own child, my daughter? But if I deny everything I believe in, if I try to bend that far, I will break. No, Chava, my daughter." When Jesus invited people to follow him, he realized that he was asking what he was asking. He realized what he was asking. For them, it meant leaving father and mother and family for the faith, for God, for justice, righteousness. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to cope with it. A quote says, "Today's gospel is called the gospel of fire because of the inevitable confrontation it speaks of as part of living the Christian life." Jesus bluntly states the meaning and purpose of his life when he says, "I have come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were blazing already." Once touched by Jesus, our lives are never the same, never same. He ignites us to live fully. He pushes us into the center of life so that we are forced to take a stand for or against him. Do you suppose that I have come to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. These words of Jesus disturbs us. In today's gospel, Jesus talks about his mission by using the metaphor of lighting a fire, and he refers to his passion by using the image of baptism to be received. Both fire and water are ambivalent symbols fire can be awesome. It was seen by the Israelites to symbolize the presence of God. It is also terrifying in its power and symbolized by its ability to cleanse, to divide, destroy, and purify, as the Jews experienced during their exodus. But remember, in Isaiah 42 are the consoling and soothing words of God. But not without justice and righteousness to which we are led. A bruised reed he will not break. A smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice on earth. In his law, the islands will put their hope. Isaiah 42, 3-4. Jesus also says he has a baptism to receive, which brings to mind another ambivalent symbol of God's activity, water. This water brings life, refreshment, cleansing, and healing, but also destruction and death during floods and other moments. Today's gospel put Jesus and what he stood for in sharp perspective. No one who accepts Jesus can be the same. His message would bring a sword even to people who were closely related to each other. The quality of our lives depends not on whether or not we have conflicts, but on how we respond to them, reminds Tom Crum. Some time ago, a newspaper columnist, Arthur Jones, shared an important moment in his earlier life with his readers. It happened when he was drafted into the Royal Air Force and found himself in military barracks with 30 other men. On the first night, he had to make a decision. He always knelt to say his prayers. Should he continue to kneel now that he was in the military service in a barrack with other young men? He squirmed a little and then said to himself, why should I change just because people are watching? Am I going to begin my life away from home by letting other people dictate what I should do or not do? He decided to kneel. By the time he had finished, he became aware that everyone else was aware of him. When he made the sign of the cross, he was aware that everyone else knew he was a Catholic. As it turned out, he was the only Catholic in the barrack. Yet night after night he knelt. He said that those 10 minutes on his knees often led to discussions that lasted for hours. On the last day in the boot camp, someone said to him, "You are the finest Christian I ever met. You are the finest Christian I ever met." He replied, "Well, I might be the most public Christian you have ever met, but I don't think I am the finest. Still, I thank you for what you have said." Story illustrates one of the points of today's gospel. Commitment to Jesus means taking a stand on certain things. And sometimes that stand sets us in opposition to other people, Mark Link reminds us. Healthy adults talk about problems. We look for solutions. When people hurt us, we communicate with compassion. No connection will last if people hold in all of their anger, pain, and misunderstandings. Jeremiah had the unpleasant task of warning the people that if they continue in their corrupt way of life and did not repent and return to God, their nation would be destroyed. The people did not like Jeremiah's warnings and complained that his message was demoralizing the people. He was accused of treason and punished by being lowered into a cistern where he was stuck in the mud until he was rescued. Jeremiah knew he had to speak the truth and warn the people no matter what the consequence of his life is. Despite his pain, the prophet remained faithful to his mission. Sister Tina was one of the finest students I have had met. Father Francis Gonsalves tells a story about Sister Tina, whose name is changed. A doctor of science, she lectured in a prestigious college in Mumbai before expressing a desire to enter a convent. This broke the heart of her mother, who wanted to see her successful by worldly standards. Sadly, Tina's mother refused to speak to her and didn't even turn up at peak moments like her own religious profession. This is an example of what Jesus tells today by saying, from now on, families will be divided. Mother against daughter and daughter against mother. You can't comfort the afflicted without afflicting the comfortable. Once Princess Diana said, Christianity is not a dull religion. Nothing could be further from Jesus' intention. His own life shows this. He preached on street corners as well as in synagogues. He constantly met new and interesting characters, from wealthy tax collectors to pushy prostitutes. He was faced with every kind of human problem, from intellectual tests to family squabbles about inheritance. He enjoyed banquets and fasted for weeks in the desert. He asked little children to come into his presence just to enjoy them. And at other times he had fierce battles with the Pharisees, whom he called hypocrites and whitewashed sepulchres. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to handle conflict by peaceful means, mentioned by Ronald Reagan some years ago. The compassion, the selflessness, the humility, the justice that Jesus demands of those who would be his disciples are a fire and a baptism through which we transform our world in the life and love of God. The challenge of discipleship, Jesus teaches us, is not to let God's word of justice and mercy divide us, but to realize that the world's ability to bring all humanity together as God's holy people, to live the gospel faithfully, is to become a contradiction to those around us, to seek to attain a higher ethical and moral standard in confronting the life's challenges. The gospel calls us to risk power, prestige, and even acceptance, to stand up for the equality, justice, compassion, and reconciliation that every individual possesses by virtue of being a son or a daughter of God. In the divisions we suffer, in the contradictions we encounter, in the disconnect between the conventional wisdom and the wisdom of God, the love of God is the one constant that brings us back to one another, that heals the rifts, that bridges, that divides between us. Conflict is inevitable, but compact is optional, reminds us by Max Lucado. Let us pray. God our Father, by his life and death, your Son showed us the stony road that leads us to life and love. Let the fire of his Spirit burn in us, that we may reject easy compromises with evil, with the guilty, uncommitted peace, and silent complicity in iniquity. Make us honest and straightforward like Jesus, so that with him we may put your will and love above everything else through Christ our Lord. Amen. God bless.